Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all of those who are present on this live session today. My name is Karina Salcedo, and I will be hosting this online event. It is an honor for the UTPL, a leader in distance education, to present this master's class, Factors Relevant for Cross-Cultural Communication to Consider when Teaching Culture in EFL, in which professors of our master's program in foreign and national languages will do their presentations. Thank you very much for your participation. We invite you to comment using the hashtag MaestríasUTPL through our official UTPL account on Facebook. The master's program in foreign and national languages with a specialization in English teaching trains professionals in the methodology of English teaching learning process by using innovative strategies and technological resources that support critical thinking, teamwork, and conflict solutions, considering the respect to cultural diversity for the application in the professional practice and contribution. Our students are professionals in the field of education in programs related to teaching of national and foreign languages, and with an undergraduate degree in English language teaching or other fields of knowledge that involve experience in teaching English as a foreign language. Their certificates must be registered by CENESID. Today, our professor, who has extensive experience in this field, will share her views and knowledge of this important topic. Let me introduce Magister Nina Nesterenko, who will do her presentation to all attendees joining us. Before starting, let me introduce Magister Gina Camacho, the director of this master program, who will welcome us to this event.
Good afternoon, everyone. I really appreciate you to have taken the time to be connected to this important academic event. I would like to express a special thanks to Professor Nina Nesterenko, who is going to share some important aspects related to the topic Factors Relevant for Cross-Cultural Communication to Consider when Teaching Culture in EFL. Distance education is very popular because it responds to various needs of students, such as flexible schedules, geographical distances, personalized education, access to the right to education, among others. And it's also compatible with another important trend in higher education, which is lifelong learning. The world in which we currently live requires a master's degree. It is necessary to reinvent ourselves and value virtual learning environments. Every time we postpone tasks, we are using other activities as a refuge, not to face a responsibility, an action, or a decision that we must make. In this context, the key is the organization of our time in order to fulfill all the activities. Our program perfectly meets your needs. Do not let this opportunity to slip through your fingers. Make the right decision and obtain your master's degree in 10 courses during a year. Let's remember that the barriers to achieve our dreams are just in our mind. It is we who limit ourselves and stop our progress. I invite you to make from this situation an opportunity to transcend those limits. Empower yourselves and decide to study at distance. I assure you that the learning experience in this postgraduate program will be very rewarding. I invite you to be part of this experience, which will enrich your teaching work. Remember that you can never understand one language until you understand at least two. Geoffrey Williams. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gina. Now, let me remind you the format of this event. Our presenter will have 45 minutes to give her lecture. If the audience have any questions, you can type your questions on the comments section on the Facebook live streaming. Our presenter will answer them and at the end of the master class. So we invite you to actively participate in this session. Now, without further ado, we are presenting Magister Nina Nesterenko. She holds a degree of Master of Science in Philology, with undergraduate studies in foreign languages and literature in Kiev State University, Ukraine. Faculty of Romance and Germanic Languages, Russian, Ukrainian, Spanish, English. She works as an English professor in UTPL since October 1982 until present. Don't forget that our technical staff will receive your questions or concerns that will be responded at the end of the presentation. Good afternoon, Nina.
Thank you very much, Karina, Gina, and all of you for letting me be part of this important event. I sincerely grateful. And well, I just want to share a little bit of I know with you today. So it's about this important topic, factors relevant for cross-cultural communication.
Thank you. You can start with your lecture.
Okay, thank you. So I have my presentation that let me share it please with you. Yeah, so here it is, teaching culture. Well, I'm excited about this topic because nowadays culture becomes an important aspect that we need to consider when teaching foreign languages. So in today's brief lecture, I'm going to focus on what culture is, provide its definition, and we'll try to make a connection with this culture and communication, how they are related. Well, and also, why do we need to know about culture and English foreign language class? And now, nowadays, it's considered to be like a fifth language skill. Yeah, so it's interesting to know why. Today, culture is not just like we have listening, speaking, all those language skills that you know, but why culture becomes so important. Well, and finally, I'm going to focus on some factors. Actually, it's a topic of this masterclass, factors relevant for cross-cultural communication. Well, so culture, such an easy word, right? Everybody knows its meaning. Everybody understands what it is, but can you really define it, what culture is? Okay, so to do this, I prepared a set of pictures for you to have a better idea. Yeah, so when you see at these pictures, you can identify, probably you see that it's yours, not yours. Right? Yeah, so here we have people gathered in the table. Then we have this people, these young ladies with different clothes. And now we have a picture of someone that probably resembles you, like your culture, right? Yeah. So speaking about culture, we also need to mention something, some things like here you have food, right? And probably this food you don't know because it's my native Ukrainian food. We have it here. Well, and look at this nice celebration. You could easily recognize probably burning dummies when you do during Christmas, New Year Eve. This is India, and so on. Yeah, so we can see all those pictures and we can easily identify it's ours or not ours. Well, next, speaking about culture, it's also important to mention physical appearance. You know, that physical appearance, it's culturally conditioned. We have culturally conditioned reasons for this physical appearance, like people look. Yeah, so culturally conditioned means that they identify themselves as a part of their culture, of their society. Yeah, so if we look like these people in these pictures, we can see. We can say, no, it's not us, right? Yeah, because we have different lifestyle, we have different body decorations, and we look differently. Yeah, so speaking about culture, we have also these aspects like physical appearance. Well, this is interesting. You see her black teeth in this lady, and actually what we usually do, yeah, we try to make our teeth as white as possible to have this famous Hollywood smile, but in some cultures, dyeing teeth in black color means wealth, yeah, because it's a protection, it's a special kind of like a remedy that they use people who can afford it economically, yeah, and so this is a signal that she belongs to a wealthy family and she can afford doing this, yeah, well, and Well, and speaking about culture, we also can see these musical instruments, right? Yeah, and you can easily identify which is yours and which is not. Well, actually, I have this as a help for you, countries they belong to. Well, this is my native Ukrainian instrument, and then this is, you can easily identify it, right? Like your Latin American wind instruments. And Russia and Siberian Yakut tribes, they have this musical instrument, but it's not all, you see. So how difficult to define culture in one single word, right? Yeah. And speaking about those differences, we can also need to mention this different architectural styles, yeah, like this teepee in North American Indians. Well, actually, this is first, it's old Ukrainian hut, and then we have African, and so on. Yeah, so looking at this is a famous church in my native city, Kiev, in Ukraine, and there's opera house. Well, so, and this is a Holland, Indian churches or temples, famous Taj Mahal, opera house in Vienna, Austria, and those who travel to the United States could recognize Times Square, right? Well, so as you could see, I told you that culture, everybody knows what culture is, but how can we define it? It has lots of components and elements, right? And so here we have those elements like clothes, like food, like musical instruments, dance, folk, architecture, buildings, customs, and traditions. We also identify ourselves as belonging to culture by traditions we use and rules and norms of behavior. And obviously also social interaction, how people interact between them, education. It also comprises literature, myths, legends, and language. Language, well, actually, language is the outmost representation of a culture. It's jargon, slang, idiomatic expression, ceremonies, celebrations, and so on. Well, so here you have an official definition of a culture. It comes from a Latin word, cultura. Well, those who speak Spanish can easily recognize it, right? And it's related to cult or worship. Well, and what is important to mention for our conference today, that culture of society comprises the shared values. So we belong to this society, to this society, cultural society, because we have common understandings, assumptions, and goals that are learned from earlier generations, right? And imposed by present members of society and passed on to succeeding generations. Well, and culture is the result of human interaction. So how we learn what we know, how we know that we are Ecuadorians or we are Ukrainians or we are, let's say, Australians and so on, it's because we interact with people who are around us. And we learn it from our environment. Consequently, culture is not innate. Nobody is born belonging to this or that culture. Yeah, we learn. So in not innate. It's not inborn ability. We have to learn. It's a result of interaction. And when we interact, we use language, right? And here we have a famous I decided to present this Geert Hofstede picture, a photograph of his. It's a famous Holland social psychologist also, and he identified. He actually worked in a multinational company, and he could see why people fail in communicating with each other. Something is wrong. Yeah, everybody speaks language correctly, following grammar rules and so on, but something missing. Something was missing. So he could identify those differences in culture, and those differences in culture exactly that they influence in our interaction. So culture guides and governs the behavior of people in a community, and it's known as a collective programming of mind. Yeah, so which distinguishes us from outsiders. Yeah, so we can say when we look at someone, we say, okay, so probably it's a part of our culture because the person dresses like us, speaks the same way, and so on. But when we see someone different, so differently speaking, so we can like label like an outsider. And culture is a part of a family life, yeah. So it comes from a very young age. So as I said, nobody is born already belonging to this or that culture. We learn it in a very young age from our parents or people who surround us. Well, from our point of view, as educators, we can say that culture, language, and English foreign language teaching is all these aspects are intertwined. I cannot say what is more important, language, culture, or English foreign language teacher. It's like is a whole. Why? Because language, when we teach English, right? When we teach English, we use language. Yeah, but language, not only using language or learning a foreign language, not only refers to memorization of grammar rules, memorization of vocabulary, but also it implies a correct usage of socio-cultural knowledge. Yeah, so how we have to interact with people around us, and when we speak with someone who belongs to another culture, yeah, who belongs to who has different customs, different traditions, and so on. Well, so communication within a certain culture is a product of socially and historically adopted discourse way people interact, way people speak with each other, and how speech community, it's a group of people who share the same characteristics of language. Yeah, so and this influences our verbal use. Well, of words. Well, so culture consequently is a community's language, yeah, and it represents a social patrimony that distinguishes insiders from outsiders. Example: when you travel to the United States and when you hear or see someone speaking Spanish, but you can immediately identify, okay, this person is from Ecuador or from Mexico or from Peru, or how you know this, yeah, by the words that person uses, maybe even pronunciation, way of manipulating your voice or his or her voice, yeah. So we can easily identify as outsider or insider, yeah, people who share the same characteristics, speak the same language. Well, and so language is a part of a culture, and culture is a part of a language, and consequently, we cannot separate them when we teach a foreign language. Well, and so culture, language, and communication, they are all intertwined. Well, as I have said, language is influences our behavior because we behave during a speech act according to what we are accustomed to, according to sociocultural rules. For example, this is what cost me much when I came here to Ecuador. It cost me much not to interrupt people here because you have different behavior. When I open, someone is speaking and I want to express my excitement of the topic of a conversation, so I use interjections. Like, wow, don't tell me like this. Yeah, so what I noticed, the speaker here in Ecuador immediately stopped speaking. I say, my goodness, something that I said wrong or what happened? Why, when I open my mouth, another person stops? Yeah, so it's because it's a different behavior, right? Different rules of behavior that we have and we adopt. And it may lead to this miscommunication, or not miscommunication, but like misunderstanding, or maybe even not so positively seen. So understanding how human beings feel, respond, believe, and value is an exceedingly important aspect of foreign language acquisition. Yeah, so not only we need to know grammar, how to structure sentences from syntactic point of view, how we have to pronounce words in an understandable way, but also how we need to know some rules, how to behave properly when we communicate with someone from another society, from another cultural background. Well, so communication and culture, we have, well, I decided to use this explanation for you, intercultural communication. So communication refers to a process of using words, signs, and behaviors of exchanging information to express ideas, thoughts to someone else. And so these words should be mutually understandable for speakers of the same community. Well, and culture, as you could see from my beginning slides, when these pictures of architecture, physical appearance, and so on, we can conclude that culture is our collective identity, how we identify ourselves as a part of this and not another culture. Yeah, so when we have this communication with someone from another culture, we have intercultural communication. And this is exactly when we may find those difficulties to decoding messages, to understanding correctly what another person says. Yeah, for example, well, this is an example I always give my students. It was for me kind of like new. Like in Spanish, someone said, esa persona me cae bien. Yes, in que lado me cae, de que lado me cae. Yeah. So this is because I could not understand the real message of these idiomatic expressions in Spanish, or another way, decoding message. Había gente como mote. What is mote? First of all, I needed to learn what mote is, yeah, to understand that how many people were in this the crowd, yeah. So decode message according to our cultural background. So people who do not belong to this cultural background, do not belong to this society, may not understand that meaning, right? So this is an example. So more knowledge we have about external world, about different cultural communities, customs, rules of behavior. So more successful communication will become. Consequently, the level of knowledge involved allows degrees of interaction between people, and obviously, more we know, more successful will be our communication, and more successful will be our interaction with someone who belongs to another culture. Well, and successful communication is quite a complex issue. So, as I have said before, it's not enough just to have a good domain of a mastery of a language, vocabulary or grammar, as I have said, but also we need to know when to speak, how to speak, and which words we can use, which we cannot, how we have to start conversation, how we have to finish it, what topics we can use during conversation, and interpret body language and so on. So it's very complex issue, and definitely knowing only grammar or knowing only vocabulary, it's definitely not enough. Yeah, for this reason, there is kind of like a tendency now to consider culture or teaching culture in foreign language education as a fifth skill. Yeah, so to become to achieve a smooth communication and complete understanding without this communicational breakdowns, we need to be aware of those differences. Even more now, we have this so globalized world today. Yeah, and you know that nowadays there are more non-native speakers of English than native speakers. Yeah, because you know that English is used nowadays like a lingua franca. So it means that people of different languages use English for communication. So obviously, those cultural differences will be reflected in their communication. Well, that's why there is a great responsibility lays upon us, teachers of foreign language, to share or provide at least basics of cultural differences and help our students become more successful communicators and speakers. Well, so here we have factors that we need to consider when we teach English, when we communicate cross-culturally. Well, in this slide, you can see that these people have misunderstandings, interpreting body language, interpreting gestures. Well, so there are actually lots of factors that we need to consider. And with this regard, I'd like to again present Geert Hofstede. He was an outstanding person, as I have said, from Holland, and he outlined dimensions, cultural dimensions, and actually those cultural dimensions, they helped understand why communication may have breakdowns, why a communication may not be achieved completely in a successful way. It's because all of us, we belong to particular society that has some characteristics. And well, actually in our course, in our master's program, we analyze all those dimensions in a very detailed way, but in this master class, I'm going to very briefly address them as a part of factors that we need to consider, like individualism and collectivism. Well, one of the biggest individualistic societies known for you is United States. Well, and in United States, they are known for being a very individualistic, and how can I explain it? That they make emphasis on self-autonomy, to development of self-autonomy of people, of children, from the very young age. And it can be reflected in the way how they give exams, for example. Yeah, so exam, it's a very difficult, tough moment in the life of American students, because if they are cheating, so it may be subject to be expelled from the university. Well, and compare how you give examples in Ecuador, in spite of applying a very strict control, but students anyway find ways how they can help each other. But in the United States, it's not like this. They encourage this self-autonomy since a very young age. And in collectivistic societies, for example, like in this Happy Children in one of the tribes in Pacific Ocean, why I decided to use this picture, because it impressed me when I learned about this, that in that particular tribe, children do not how can I say, they belong to the whole tribe. Yeah, so people in this tribe, they do not make distinctions, my or not mine, it's the neighbor's child. So all children are treated in the same way. Yeah, if they were having all those people, adult people, were their parents. Yeah, so, and they help each other. So in collectivistic societies, basically there are some Asian cultures like China, Japan. Yeah, so they understand their survival, like help, they need to help each other. Yeah, so that's why it's a very distinguishable characteristic. So when we deal with someone from the United States, and when we ask him or her for help, and he or she rejects or refuses to help us, it's not because that person is very selfish or egoistic, it's because it's a part of their culture. You see how it's important we start this. And then we have power distance. Power distance, it's another very important factor to consider, because power distance, it explains the relationship between, let's say, employer and employee, a student and a teacher. Yeah, for example, I belong to a country where teacher stands very high in a pedestal, and students, we are little insignificant things below. Yeah, so what I want to say, that when a teacher tells something, or teacher imposes his or her opinion, so we even cannot we are not allowed to interact. We are not allowed to judge his or her opinion, and so on. So teacher is an utmost authority in the classroom. For example, here in Ecuador, it was absolutely shocking for me when many years ago I started my first classes here in Ecuador, and what my students did, they came, give me a kiss, give me a hug, teacher, nice to meet you. I was in shock. Yeah, so you see how we can consider those differences, yeah, like important, because for me it was a shock. So, but here it's quite normal, this kind of relationship. And for example, in this slide that I prepared for you, it's a power distance. Yeah, it's also has to do with a relationship between employee and his employer. In a high power distance countries, they usually are like Japan, Asian culture as well, part in my culture as well. Yeah, people don't question the decisions of their leaders, and initiative is not welcome. Yeah, so initiative is supposed to come from a boss, not from employees. You are employees, you simply have to, like robots, continue doing what you are expected to do, and who has the brain. Yeah, brain of everything is a boss. Yeah, so boss simply imposes what must be done. And but in low power distance, like let's say in the United States or here in Ecuador, this power distance is not that great. Excuse me. So if an employee has an initiative, he or she can go and discuss this for the benefit of the whole enterprise and so on. Yeah, so it's very important, those differences. Well, next important, it's masculine versus feminine society. Well, actually, it doesn't have to do with gender, but it just refers to values that in those societies people share. Well, the one of the very well-known masculine society is United States. And the United States, well, here we have some characteristics for you to understand those factors that shape the relationship between people who belong to masculine or feminine society. Well, society is more competitive. It's very competitive. So what I know is supposed in the according to mentality of people in the United States. What I know, I'm not going to tell you because you may be my rival. You may be my I have to be afraid of you, not afraid, but be careful of you, because if I share my knowledge with you or with someone else, so this someone else may succeed me and take my position at job. Yeah. So what I know, it's my knowledge. Yeah. And you have your knowledge. So I'm not going to help you because it's a part of this masculine society. Well, and that's why we have this admiration for the successful achiever. Yeah, admiration. And this admiration of this successful achiever, it's how much money we can spend. Remember, in English language, we have saying, keeping up with the Joneses, right? How much possessions or how many possessions my neighbors have, so I have to keep up with them or maybe succeed. Yeah, so what is how luxurious your car is, how big and nice your house is. Yeah, so that's why economic growth is given a high priority. And remember that if you watch some American movies, they have kind of like a very offensive word. You're a loser, so you cannot achieve anything. Yeah, you're a loser. Yeah, so this is part of their mentality. And whereas in feminine societies, we have a relationship between people are different. So they have a caring for others, a preference for cooperation, and quality of life, and people are important. Yeah, so this is some of the factors. Yeah, so we can mention to understand how people behave differently. And let me go back, please, because we still have some more, a couple of dimensions to mention. Uncertainty avoidance, how people treat something that is not willingness to take risks. In Spanish, you have a saying, más vale algo conocido que por conocer, right? I think you know this saying, and this is it represents the mentality of people. So how willing you are to take risks. You can plunge to something that you don't know. You can start from zero and succeed, or you just want to be on the safe side and not to go to make those drastic changes in your life. Yeah, well, so this is are just some of these dimensions that I have said before. We're going to, if you decide to enroll in this master's program, so we're going to analyze in depth and give more examples, and it will help you understand people from other societies in a better way. Well, next, another important factor to consider is the so-called high or low context cultures. Well, actually, this is knowing about those differences, how people behave in the so-called high and low context culture will explain some failures in communication. Well, and low context culture, that's it's represented by by United States, Canada, Anglo-Saxon cultures, most of cultures in Europe, including my native Ukraine. Yeah, so we belong to low context culture. What it means, how it is reflected in communication with people from these cultures. Well, messages are very direct. One spells things exactly what he wants or she wants to say, and may ask several times for clarification. A very direct message. What it means, that, like, for example, you, my dear students, who you belong to, if you are from Ecuador, so you know that how you have your conversation. You never come and begin your conversation going straight to the point. I'm here because I need this and that. How is your mom? What's the weather? Did you watch your last novel or soap opera, and so on? Yeah, so this small insignificant talk is considered like a waste of time in those countries. So I remember myself when I came here 30 years ago to Ecuador, and since I belong to this low context culture, I used to maintain this particular way of starting conversation, especially with people who I do not know well. Yeah, so I directly start my conversation directly. And then I noted it was kind of like, I was labeled kind of like a pussy, kind of like very different. Yeah, so it's because here in Ecuador, you have different way of having conversation. And low use of nonverbal elements, so nod, this, gesticulation, like a very proper, let's say, for people from Italy. You know, that Italian people are very rich in their gesticulation. Yeah, so also privacy is important. It refers to personal space. So in different in these cultures, like United States, Canada, and so on, you see in the slide. Yeah, so people used to keep a distance during conversation. Well, and the key word for this characteristic, he have a role of speed. Time is money. Yeah, so time is money. That's why no time to waste speaking about insignificant word. Yeah, and no concept of face in public image. Yeah, and understand when we, for example, see someone from the United States, they tend to be very friendly and very informal in way they dressing. Yeah. So it can be a millionaire, can be a very wealthy person, very rich person, but he or she may use just old sneakers, worn sweater, and will not care about physical appearance. Even giving a lecture, this person may come in the university very informally dressed, in slippers and so on. Yeah, so it's not important how they look, because they know that it's not important. Yeah, so this is important for us not to judge people by their appearance, but the knowledge they have. Yeah, so it's in low. And then we have high context culture, and here we have highest is Japan, and then, my dear, Latin American countries, right? Latin American countries, and you may maybe find characteristics that are familiar for you. High use of nonverbal elements, body language is important, even voice tone is important, facial expressions, gestures, and eye movement carry significant parts of conversation. And concept of face or strong public image is very important. Yeah, so it's very important. And a verbal message is indirect. Yeah, so we can make insinuations like hints, like giving some nonverbal implied message, sending to person to understand, or using the same topic, but we can give it different ways, embellishing it. Yeah, so comparing, like in the United States, time is money, no time for to waste it. So time is not easily scheduled. So we have this in Loja, at least they have hora lojana. It's not hora lojana, it's hora latina. Yeah, because it's a part of the culture that time is not easily scheduled. Well, yes, let's continue. And then next factor to consider, we have verbal and non-verbal communication difference as well. Actually, speaking about verbal and non-verbal, we can mention lots of things. Yeah. So as I said before, language is the utmost representation of a culture, and we are supposed, people who belong to the same society are supposed to share those verbal codes. What are those verbal codes? Verbal codes are a set of rules about the use of words in creation of understanding of messages between members of different cultures. So if you want to understand the había gente como mote, first of all, we need to know what mote is. Yeah. So, and this is possible only for people who share the same characteristics, cultural, or like me, who already have been living so many years here. So finally, I managed to know this saying. Well, and it can be reflected in oral or spoken language. So those verbal codes play a key role in a culture, as it's how they communicate and interact with one another. Well, and without an understanding of those verbal codes, we cannot communicate effectively. That's why verbal codes, it's be able to uncipher or decode those messages is very important. And it means that we already know or have a good domain of a language, and we know elements of a culture. Well, speaking about linguistic differences, spoken differences, we can say differences in greetings and farewells. We greet differently. For example, well, just an example. Here you have ¿cómo estás? Or ¿cómo has amanecido? But an interesting example, actually, I have learned about this example practically before this master class, that in some Arab countries, they don't have, for example, good night. Yeah, que tengas buena noche. Yeah, they have a very nice equivalent. May good news wake you in the morning. May good news wake you up in the morning. Que te despiertas con buenas noticias. Yeah, so they don't say good night, but they use this nice way of using this. Yeah, so how we greet people, how we say goodbye also is different. Well, politeness, we're going to talk in a couple of seconds. Well, politeness, it's another way how we can interpret it. Euphemisms words or taboo words that we do not spell them directly. Like, for example, a person with who is a handicapped person or invalid. We don't say invalid or handicapped. We say person with special needs, or people who have not so young. In Spanish, you have de tercera edad, yeah? Porque no hay cuarta, quinta, pero tercera, yeah. So this is an example, yeah? But in English, we have elderly, yeah? So this is our euphemisms, that we don't say the person who is old, because it's kind of rude, but we use those euphemisms, we paraphrasing, making it a nicer way. Well, topics of conversation, it's very important. Which topic we can speak with someone from another culture, which is not, we need to consider it. And how we take turns during conversation. Well, and also address forms, how we address each other. And for example, here in Ecuador, and actually it was a topic of when I came here to Ecuador for the first time, I decided to, when I came back to my university, it was a topic for my thesis, address people Ecuadorian people use. Address forms Ecuadorian people use in conversation, because I was deeply impressed by su reinita, mi bonita, mijo, mija, and like this. Yeah, so address forms are absolutely different in different cultures. Yeah, in kinship, family relationships, and how we can introduce people. So politeness, what it means to be polite? Yeah, to say thank you, to say hello. This is what we think. No, this is what is different. Yeah, because in different cultures, people interpret politeness different way. Yeah, for example, this impoliteness, for us, we consider it not polite. This impoliteness occurs due to cultural differences. And those cultural differences are known as pragmatic failure. So people fail to be polite because they don't know what means be polite in this or that culture. Let's see some examples. Yeah, saying thank you is polite, right? Yeah, so we are expected to someone to say thank you if you give a compliment and so on. But different countries, they interpret differently. So thanking does not exist in speech of Australian Aborigines. They don't have this thanking. They don't have this concept. Why? And also it's not present, thanking is not present in Thailand. Here we have a lady, because they belong to Buddhist cultures, Buddhist religion, and Buddhist religion emphasizes modesty. So when you say thank you, so it means that you're excited. Yeah, like here in Ecuador, when you receive gifts, so everybody is expecting you to open a gift, express happiness, extreme surprise and happiness on your face, start kissing, hugging, say, wow, thank you. Yeah, but when you give a gift to someone from Thailand, so this person will receive and saying nothing. What your reaction will be? Say, the person is not polite. Yeah, but it's not because the person is not polite. It's because of those differences. Well, and apologizing. You, for example, in Ecuador, my dear, over apologize for everything. Even when you finish the discourse, you say, disculpad. Eso fue mi primera, it was my first surprise, one of my first surprises when I was present in a public discourse of a person. So she finished her speech saying, disculpad. I say, what's wrong? Who is addressing this disculpad? Yeah, and I remember one of my class, my students, I asked them to write an essay, and she wrote an essay and finished. Excuse. So it was like a transfer of this disculpad. Yeah, so it was for people who don't, like me, do not belong to this culture. It seems kind of like unusual, right? And promising, my dear, promising in Ecuador, ya regreso, cuando you have no intention to do this in a store, for example. Yeah, but it's not interpreted like something impolite. Yeah, it's a polite way to leave a store when you could not buy something you wanted. Yeah, but in other cultures, it's, for example, if I receive yo regreso, so I will start waiting until this person comes back, right? Yeah, so this is can lead to this pragmatic failure. Well, and then we have promising. Promising is not present in this ilang cost treble price in Philippines and in Australian Aborigines. Yeah, the scary boys. They never apologize. Yeah, so they don't have this concept. And compliment. Compliment is another way to be polite, right? To say something to make somebody or someone to feel well, but also it is interpreted differently. For example, in Japan, Chinese, Russian, and my Ukrainian culture, when we receive a compliment, we tend to minimize this compliment. If I say, Nina, you look nice today, I say, oh, really? But I did not sleep well, or I feel tired, and so on. But how you react, my dear? You usually react, oh, thank you. Yeah, but you see, it's differently. People react differently. Yeah, and the next thing, if someone says, oh, you have nice ring to someone who is from India, so the person from India will give this thing to you. So this person will interpret this as a desire, your desire to possess that thing. So be careful to give compliments or say compliments to someone from India, because it will be interpreted differently. Well, and Americans, for example, here we have differences in linguistic expression, British and American languages, variations. Well, so Americans tend to mostly prize possessions. You remember, it's a masculine society that possessions, wow, it's a reason for admiration. Yeah, and appearance, great. And for Chinese in some Asian countries, they usually praise ability, how intelligent you are, how skillful you are, and so on, because modesty is required. Well, next, let's continue briefly with some more factors. Nonverbal. Nonverbal, we can also see differences in body language, in gestures, body posture, personal space, facial expressions, and even a modulation of voice. Well, greetings. Yeah. So when we see people from different cultures, they greet each other, we can be or scared or be in shock or simply do not understand why men, for example, in Russia, in Ukraine, in some Slavic countries, they give kisses in the cheek, in cheek. Yeah. So it just in cheeks. Yeah. So it just expression of greeting is affection, yeah, to someone, yeah, but people who are outsiders, they may interpret it completely different. Well, and culture that are non-touch culture, they avoid physical contact. The greetings are different, like bows to hands together and so on. Well, and body posture also represents very may represent different meanings, like in some cultures, like in the United States, American, so hands in pockets may show a disrespect in Korea or in Japan, but in Western cultures, it's just a normal gesture. You feel comfortable, relaxed, that's why you use your hands in pockets. And using hands in hips maybe also may be perceived as aggression, like aggressiveness, yeah, in some Asian cultures, right? Yeah, so body posture is also important aspect. Well, hand gestures. Actually, when you travel to another country, keep your hands for yourself. Try not to use fingers for yourself, because different gestures you produce with your hands may be not well interpreted. And again, I share from my experience when my children were growing up. I said, okay, my son is tall, he is high, he is of this height. They Nina, don't show this because we use this gesture for animals. I say we use this gesture instead. Okay, I say okay, but this is not clear for me. How my son is like this, or like this. I can't understand. Yes, this. No, Nina, don't do this. Yeah. So you see how we can interpret hand gestures. Also, they are absolutely maybe misunderstood those gestures. This is what actually happened to me. And also, come here, no offensive way, but in Japanese or Asian cultures, they use it that way. And look, you will be probably surprised. It's me. You point at yourself, at your chest, but in Asian cultures, you know, it's me. Funny, right? Yeah, so this is how we use. Then, next, when you want to express your tender feelings toward children, because children are tender creatures, and we want to express our nice feelings by patting a hand. Be careful if it's a child from Asian cultures, because when we pat someone in a head, it may be very, very offensive in Japanese cultures. Well, Japanese and some Asian cultures, because this is the most sacred part of their body. Yeah, so we can refer. And then we have also mention some aspects like eye contact, proxemics, how people tend to keep distance during conversation. And what is important, important factors, we're about to finish, couple of minutes, please. We have cognition, what we learn from our childhood. And this cognition will help us to prevent from creating stereotypes, oversimplified vision of someone. And affects how we can feel someone from other culture and create this empathy, feel like people, or feel understand behavior of those people, and not to create prejudices, because if we see someone who is differently dressed, differently eating, for example, in India, people use they eat using hands, even rice they eat using hands. So what our first impression is, this person doesn't know table manners, right? But we can create this stereotyping or prejudices against the person, but it will be reflected in our behavior. So we must be very careful. And for you, my dear, to understand that when we speak about cross-cultural communication, we need to know some social rules and consider those differences to not to create discrimination, and not to create those cognitive biases, misunderstandings why people behave differently. Yeah, well, so cognitive biases are tendencies to think in a certain way that is different from us. Well, finally, we are about to conclude. To sum up, we have to consider those factors that affect cross-cultural communication. Non-verbal communication differences that comprises body language, body posture, eye contact, facial expressions, interpreting of space, how close we can stand during conversation, yeah, and how can we touch or not, like greetings, for example. Another factor is cultural dimensions like masculine societies or individualistic, collectivistic societies, right? And then we have verbal, linguistic, and non-verbal communication, and we have this people understand politeness in a different way, compliments and greetings and so on. And we need to consider cultural context, and cultural context like high and low. And for you to remember about this, it's interpretation of time, how we interpret time. And obviously, all this is shaped by our cognition, what we learn from the beginning. That is why it's very important for us teachers to share the knowledge of cultures, histories. History, it doesn't refer to historietas. History is like science that it explains development of a country. Yeah. And why people behave this way, in understanding of the relationship between culture and the language, should be important, and create this intercultural competence that refers to sensitivity toward cultural stereotypes. Well, and to make our students to awaken their awareness of people's own and others' beliefs and values. Yeah, and create this affect and empathy, understanding of people, why people behave this way. Well, so, and that's why I would like to conclude my presentation with these words: the teachers should be aware of this and incorporate aspects of culture, at least basics of it, into teaching learning process. Well, thank you very much for your patience. Now I think I have questions. If I have questions, so it's time, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Nina. We would like to thank you, our professor, for sharing her expertise in this masterclass, factors relevant for cross-cultural communication to consider when teaching culture in EFL. Those who are watching the live streaming have some questions that we would like to share. Yes. Remember that the master program team will be willing to answer any questions regarding administrative aspect of the master program. You can review the link www.utpl.edu.sa/maestrías/English. Here I have some questions, Nina. The first one that is that you mentioned some barriers in cross-cultural communication. So how can these barriers be overcome? How can these barriers be overcome?
Okay, as I mentioned, more you know about cultures, easier will be your communication. So cross those barriers, first of all, to be tolerant, to develop this empathy, understanding of why people behave this way, not to plunge into judging that people in India eat with hands. Nina, well, when she speaks, she interrupts. It's because a part of our culture. Just to try to know more as much as possible. For example, if you travel to another country, so try to at least learn some basics of those differences that you might face to diminish this barrier. We speak about cross-cultural behavioral barrier, not language. Yeah? We speak about behavioral barrier, right? Yeah. So knowing some basics will help you significantly, and that's why it's a responsibility of a teacher to have this, to incorporate teaching culture in our classes.
Okay, you mentioned that there are a lot of difficulties in communication within cultures. So why it is so difficult, as you mentioned during your exposition through examples, why is communication within cultures so difficult?
So difficult because it depends on our cognition, as I mentioned. So cognition is a very important factor to consider. Cognition, what we learned from the very young age, from people, from our environment, our cultural environment. What we learned, our cognition is shaped by people who surround us, but by rules we adopt. We want to be accepted in our society. So we have to use rules that are proper for this society. So when you meet someone from another culture or background, a person who has different values, different customs, traditions, and so on, so it may result like in a shock. That's why it's difficult. It can be difficult. So again, try to learn as much as possible, yeah, to diminish this barrier,
Okay.
to diminish those difficulties.
And the last question is, how do you handle cultural differences in an English as a foreign language class?
Once again?
How do you handle cultural differences in an English as a foreign language class?
Well, actually, I invite you to be part of this master's program because exactly we are going to discuss this, how we can deal it in English foreign language class. So my subject is applied linguistic and cross-cultural communication awareness. Yeah. So how we can help our students become aware of those differences and why teaching culture became a fifth language skill. So we can use it through different activities. Actually, with my students, we developed several activities that can help our students because you know that in high schools, we don't have much time, right? We don't have much time. But anyway, it is still possible to expand, to go a little bit beyond the textbook topics and incorporate some teaching culture, some elements. For example, you speak about greetings, and you know, let's next time speak how people greet in Thailand, how people greet in Japan, let's say, yeah, or we speak about food, yeah. So why don't discuss? This is a time for you, or chance for a teacher to discuss with your students how people eat or dishes can exist or exist in different cultures as well, and and so on. Or leisure time, how your favorite time to spend when you have vacation. So what can you do? Yeah, so how people in different cultures spend their time, and so on. Yeah, so according to the topic of your textbook, you can incorporate and go a little bit beyond, and it like cultural capsule. Yeah, so it's like cultural capsule. You can introduce a little bit, and we don't need a whole week or much time, 1 hour. It's not necessary to have much time. For example, you can prepare some PowerPoint presentation or ask your students to prepare a couple of slides. How people celebrate Christmas in worldwide. Yeah, it's a teaching culture, right? And explain them the reasons for celebration, why people celebrate different ways.
Okay, Nina, thank you very much. It's a really, really interesting topic, this cultural communication, and how sometimes it is misunderstanding some expressions because we don't know this culture. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for also your responses and your views about this interesting topic. Okay. Finally, we invite Magister Gina Camacho, the director of this master program, to conclude this master class.
Thank you, Karina, and thank you, Nina. And thanks to all the people who have joined this very important event in which Nina has shared with us the some aspects about this relevant topic. Remember that you can postulate through our webpage, which I have shared with you in through Facebook, and Karina also mentioned it. And as Nina said, you are very welcome to be part of this program. I'm sure you will enjoy being part of this master's program in which you will have the opportunity to enrich your knowledge. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you, Gina. Remember that if you are interested in this master program, you can apply that www.utpl.edu.se/maestrías/English. The UTPL expresses their gratitude for your participation and emphasizes their commitment to inclusive, innovative, and quality education. Thank you very much for your participation. Good night.
La maestría en Pedagogía de los Idiomas Nacionales y Extranjeros, mención enseñanza de inglés que ofrece la UTPL, te prepara para que actualices y profundices en tus conocimientos a un nivel avanzado y que con ello puedas desarrollar las competencias para que puedas desempeñarte en los siguientes ambientes laborales. Profesor de inglés en instituciones educativas tanto de nivel primario y secundario en el sector público y privado. Profesor universitario para el nivel de carrera universitaria o título de tercer nivel o posgrado. Profesor de materias en inglés para centros e instituciones educativas bilingües. Coordinador del Departamento de Inglés en instituciones educativas. Investigador en programas de investigación centrados en el proceso de enseñanza y aprendizaje del inglés como lengua extranjera. Autor de materias para la enseñanza-aprendizaje del inglés en editoriales y empresas afines. Autor de materiales didácticos en entornos virtuales para la enseñanza-aprendizaje virtual del inglés en editoriales y empresas afines. Asesor pedagógico en centros educativos, editoriales u otras empresas públicas o privadas. Tú puedes ampliar tus horizontes laborales siendo parte de la maestría en Pedagogía de los Idiomas Nacionales y Extranjeros, mención enseñanza de inglés.